Hey guys, in this video we're going to be looking at some of the most hilarious and ridiculous phonies that the one and only Josh Sokol has gotten away with in tournament Scrabble games. Now, for those of you who don't know Josh, he's a top Scrabble player and also happens to be one of my good friends, as well as a fellow YouTube content creator and Twitch streamer, so be sure to subscribe to his channels if you haven't already. I'll be sure to link them in the description of this video. Now, Josh is well known for his creativity on the Scrabble board, and one thing he's particularly creative at is coming up with these phonies that his opponents do not challenge off the board. Now, in this position, our first example, Josh is playing Dean Hergot, another very strong player, and it's a pretty close game. Josh has a number of reasonable options here. He could play something like Halva, H-A-L-V-A, from this H-A, which scores 22 points and keeps a pretty good lead. He could also play a bit longer with something like Travel from this T. But Josh has other ideas. He decides he really wants to bingo and try to take a commanding lead in this position. So that's exactly what he does. He plays Over Tall from this O. Now, Over Tall is a particularly fitting phony for Josh, as Josh happens to be very tall himself. He's about 6'7", and he's one of the tallest Scrabble players on the scene, if not the tallest, certainly at the top level. And it's quite plausible that his opponent, Dean, was unsure of this word, but he maybe looked across the board and saw Josh and was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty plausible. So, excellent play by Josh here, taking direct advantage of his stature, which may or may not have contributed to this word staying on the board. We'll never know for sure, but in any case, can't help but laugh at this one. This is such a crazy coincidence. Dean accepted the play and went on to just play widely for 39. Josh would bingo again the next turn. Now, let's move on to our next example, which is arguably even crazier. Here he's playing Jackson Smiley, another top player, and Josh is in a lost position here. He's down 65, and he doesn't really have a way to score very much. Or does he? Josh comes up with the absolutely insane idea of playing a 14-letter word. Yes, you heard that right. A 14-letter word of re-interactable through the interact on the board as well as the L in lovey that's already on the board. And this scores a whopping 63 points. Now, as Jackson suspected, this is complete bogus. This is not a word. However, it's so hard to know for sure that this is not a word, because almost nobody studies super long words, let alone 14-letter words, as they effectively never come up in Scrabble games. That is, unless you're playing Josh and he comes up with a 14-letter phony like this one. So Jackson is in a pickle here, because if he challenges and somehow this comes back good, Josh will play out next turn and win the game. So Jackson, despite being like 99.9% sure this isn't good, decides to play it safe, and he just plays Coca over here, securing the win, since after Josh makes his outplay of Foz, Jackson holds on to win by 9 points. So while Josh didn't win the game, this helped him cut a lot of spread points. He turned what probably would have been about a 70-point loss into a 9-point loss. So that could prove very important for the end of a tournament, as spread is the tiebreaker after wins and losses. In this next game, we actually have a very similar situation. It's once again Josh versus Jackson, and Jackson is in a completely winning position. Josh is down 101 points, and he's got a decent rack, but there is nowhere for him to bingo on this board, and he will be, as a result, losing the game. Or will he? Josh finds the bingo of Hard Snake from this H-A. And once again, Jackson is in a little bit of a pickle, because if Jackson challenges and this comes back valid, Josh will play out with his remaining 3 tiles with something like Vile or Verl, and will win narrowly after picking up the 30 points from Jackson's rack, which includes the 8-point J. So Jackson can't challenge this unless he's willing to risk the win, or if he's 100% sure this isn't good. And he indeed does decide to let this go, playing Join for 40, and Josh plays out and loses by 52. This would have probably been about a 100-point loss for Josh, if not for the phony, so once again, his creativity saves him about 50 spread points. In this example, he's playing another strong player in Trevor Seeley, and Josh finds this really nice insertion play looking through the jack that's on the board, as well as the F in furs, and plays jackknife for 48 points. So a really cool play there. It's always fun playing through multiple sets of tiles already on the board. Now, the only problem is, as alert viewers might notice, jackknife is not a word. Jackknife, of course, is a very well-known thing. It's a construction instrument that can often be very loud and irritating to neighbors, and it's usually used to dig through very hard surfaces like pavement. But the problem is jackknife is spelled with 2 Ks. It's J-A-C-K-K-N-I-F-E. And Josh has played jackknife with a single K. So this is not a word, and unfortunately for Trevor, he didn't realize this during the game, and this gambit actually turned out to pay off very nicely for Josh, because later on in the game, Trevor would put an S on this to make jackknifes, and Josh would challenge it off the board as, of course, jackknife is not valid with 1K, so jackknifes is most certainly not valid with 1K. So very sneaky little tactic there by Josh, playing something that he knew wasn't a word and then challenging a hook off when his opponent made it, but a very effective tactic nonetheless, and what a hilarious phony. Now, this next example is maybe one of Josh's most legendary, if not his most legendary. He's playing last year's national champion, Michael Fagan, another top player, and Josh is in a losing position. He's got A-B-E-I-N-O-T, which does make the word niobate, but that's not going to go down on this board. Michael's got A-D-I-T-U, so he's got a decent enough rack that Josh is not going to be able to make back 58 points here. And there really isn't even a great play for him to cut spread. He could play something like Bath to this H, but then it's going to be hard for him to go out next turn. So he doesn't have a lot of good options here. Or does he? Josh finds the really cool play between the B and the H of Babita for 42 points. Definitely not a word I would have seen. And you guessed it from the theme of this video, Babita is not a word. However, it does have a very cool definition of a hybrid between a bobcat and a cheetah, specifically as Josh notes in his commentary, it is the offspring of a male bobcat and a female cheetah, because liger and tigon are both words, and a liger is the offspring of a male lion and a female tiger, whereas a tigon is the offspring of a male tiger and a female lion. So using that same logic, Josh defines Babita on the next screen over here as the offspring of a male bobcat and a female cheetah. So this is one of the most hilarious phonies I think that's ever been played in a game of Scrabble, if not the most hilarious. I remember when I heard the story of this play, I think I literally just burst out laughing so hard I almost fell to the floor. Just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how this guy comes up with these things, let alone defines it in such a hilarious way. But yeah, of course, the point here, as with some of the other positions, is Michael can't challenge if he's not sure, because if Michael challenges and this comes back good, Josh will go out with something like in over here under the BE in Babita and win the game pretty easily. So if Michael wants to guarantee the win, he's got to accept it, which is what he does. He plays quad over here on the left. Josh goes out with Nix, and Michael holds on to win by 29. So Josh not only saves some spread, but also makes history by creating one of the most ridiculous and funny phonies ever known in Scrabble history. And we've actually got a bonus one here. This is a full game also against Michael Fagan, and this is actually a game where Josh gets away with 5 phonies in one game. Yes, you heard that right. 5 phonies in one game. So let's play through the game quickly. Michael opens with Halogen. Josh is struggling with his rack a little at first. He plays QI and Zip. In this position, he's getting a little bit closer to a bingo, but this is the first key moment of the game. Michael's out to a pretty good lead, and Josh has just picked up UW on his draw, so obviously not too happy about that. And here he decides to play Druff and Vind. Druff is a very plausible word. Rough is a word and Draff is a word, but no Druff, and he plays Druff as a phony, hoping that Michael will put an S on it, and then Josh will be able to challenge it off. And that's not exactly what happens. Michael bingos with Lenient, and instead of allowing Michael to put an S on Druff, Josh takes matters into his own hands, phonying for the second turn in a row, making Dowry hooking the Y with Druffy. Now, Druffy also is not a word, but this once again stays on the board. Michael keeps scoring with Os in the bottom left corner. Now, Josh decides, well, I just got away with 2 in a row, why not make it 3? He plays Backy and Neb for a nice score of 50 points. Backy stays on the board despite not being a word, but pretty tough to challenge off. It looks like a lot of valid words like hacky, H-A-C-K-I-E is valid, and there's plenty of other words that start with back that look fairly similar. So that is now 3 phonies in a row that Josh has played and Josh has gotten away with. In this position, Josh does take a brief hiatus from phonying. He plays the valid word of factum, and then Michael bingos yet again. Josh plays taxon, and in this position, Josh decides he's down 80. This board is looking really, really bad. There's almost no places to bingo. However, Josh finds the only real bingo line, which is this U in factum, and bingos with disgouge through this U. And this is also not a word. However, another extremely creative phony, because as Josh notes in his commentary, misgouge is a word. And this, as with the other phonies, stays on the board. So we're now at a total of 4 phonies played and 4 phonies unchallenged. However, Michael is still in a commanding position. He plays Ow to take a 42-point lead. Josh really doesn't have much other than to play in the bottom right corner. And in this position, it's the endgame. Both players have a blank, but it's a really tight board, and Josh has 3 R's and a Y. So he pretty quickly realizes he doesn't have any legitimate ways to win this game, with Michael having EEL blank and certainly going out next turn with something hooking Edda or perhaps sleep to this P. So Josh, you guessed it, decides to phony for the 5th time. He plays the absolutely insane word of Rairantas through this TA, which is just ridiculous. I mean, Rairanta is, of course, not a word either. This doesn't even resemble a word. It's basically, he decided he was going to play something ridiculous through this TA and just came up with the most phonetically plausible thing. I mean, Rairantas, this is just one of the most utterly ridiculous phonies I've seen in terms of, like, it's just not even coming close to resembling another word whatsoever. Like, druff, druffy, disgouge, those are all very reasonable phonies. Backy as well, like, they could easily be confused for another word. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever Rairantas can be confused with. It's just absolutely insane. And as we saw in some of the other videos, Michael cannot challenge this word unless he's entirely sure, because Josh having just an R will go out next turn and win the game if Michael loses his turn. So Michael decides to possibly make Scrabble history. I don't know if anyone's ever won a game that they've allowed 5 phonies in. But in any case, Michael accomplishes that feat here by allowing Rairantas to stay on the board. Again, the correct decision if he's not 100% sure, since he just plays out with lever and wins by 4, by a score of 466 to 462. So really, really crazy stuff. Josh gets away with 5 phonies and still manages to lose the game. So there you have it, folks. That's, I suppose, 10 of Josh's greatest phonies. 5 in separate games, and then 1 game with 5 phonies in one. So really, really crazy stuff. And of course, shout out to Josh for always keeping us entertained with these games and his content in general. And yeah, definitely go and check out his content. As I said before, I'll put a link in the description of this video. And hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll probably keep doing more of these phony videos since they seem to be very popular. And thanks for watching, guys, and have a good one. Bye-bye.